You know, no matter the size of a community or the range of population, whatever that might be, everybody is going through this challenge of finding a place for care when they're dying and need more help than their families have to offer. And it's a really universal need. It'll continue to grow. It's going to get more and more intense of a need that we're going to see as time goes on. And these homes are a real solution for that. And it's a doable solution that most every community can do if they just have the courage and the conviction and the passion and the energy to do it.
In the 1980s, Catholic Charities had opened a home called St. Joseph Residence, and that home was built for people who were suffering from HIV and AIDS. And then we found that St. Joseph Residence was no longer needed in the same way because people who were HIV positive got better. The folks at the hospital said, "We would really love to see you change up and do something different." And when that took place, it began a conversation with the hospitals that eventually led us to reevaluate our mission. And it was really beautiful to see how what we had thought from the 1980s until, for 25 years was our mission could be reevaluated and we could open up in a new way that was really inclusive of everyone at the end of life.
Caring House is a home in existence, operating since February 2016. So it's been open about 2¼ years. Caring House is admitting its 99th resident. We started out in roughly 2002, opening in 2016. You can see it was a long haul.
We've been operating for 2 years and have seen 82 guests in our home with 3 different hospices. People have been here as short as 6 hours and as long as 194 days.
Because this was a home away from home, and we wanted our guests to be just that, guests in our home. We wanted our families to think of us as a home, not a hospital or a place for people to just, quote unquote, go to die. We want them to live comfortably with their family around, the family being able to fix their own food, being able to help in any way that they could. But we also wanted to relieve them of the stress of the 24-hour care that is so difficult at the end of life.
I'm going through the grief process after losing my husband to cancer in February. After his memorial service, there was time to be reflecting, and it was then that I realized that not everyone has the physical capabilities to care for a loved one, even with the dedicated hospice nurses providing assistance. My husband's love is my inspiration.
Many years ago, I was attending the annual assembly for hospice and palliative medicine, and I sat and I listened to Kelly speak about Clare House and the work that she was doing in her community, and I was totally blown away. That was the beginning of my journey.
I was a student at the Kubler-Ross Hospice Institute in New Mexico in 1993. And I was learning about the origins of hospice, particularly related to the history of hospice in the Middle Ages. These communities gave the best of what they had to the person who was dying. So the best straw mat, the best wine, the best dishes to eat off of, because they oftentimes felt that the Spirit of God was so much closer. So the veil was thinner. And I was so moved by that story, and I started to think about it then, about a community or a home for people who were dying.
I've been really inspired by Edwin, the founder of the Abode Home. He's had several phone conversations with me, and we also visited his home in San Antonio, Texas, when we did an RV trip to see several homes. And I was so inspired by his 20-year vision, and it gave me hope that we would be able to do this in Albuquerque.
The biggest influencer in creating the home for our community was probably the 3 other homes in Michigan that we toured. We went and looked at some other homes, and the we asked them, if you could do anything over differently, what would you do? And so we learned a lot from that, and we also got to see how they set things up and how they operated, how they did business. That was really helpful because all three of them were pretty different from each other.
I moved to Alaska. It was evident to me that as I was drawn to the homeless community more and more, serving at the shelter, that hospice cannot serve people who are homeless in Alaska because we don't have an inpatient hospice. So that you have to have a home for hospice to go to. So I could see more and more that there is just a huge need for this in our state. So I'm starting with Anchorage.
My mother, Mary Maxon, took her last breath here at our house, and myself and my family were blessed tremendously by the dignity and comfort and compassion that was given to her on her last breath. And so it just is all coming around. So we want to give other people the blessings that we have received.
Making those connections and being able to help each other do that is incredibly gratifying. Everybody's scared, but we're all following this path, and whether we do it all in the exact same way or not, we're accomplishing that mission and vision together. And there's no reason for any of us to have to reinvent the wheel. We can all learn from each other, and we're all very willing to share that knowledge and that experience that we've had in this common goal.
Some of the roadblocks, I think, in starting the home were fear. What if we don't get enough money to be able to pay the staff? What if we can't find a bigger place? I mean, I think there are a lot of things that are unknowns as you go along here. But funding, I think, is probably the biggest of those things.
Okay, so I got 4 words for you. No money, no mission. Everyone thinks if you build it, they will come, and to some extent that happens, but you got to have the money to support the work.
I formed a corporation, started on my journey without asking anyone for help. And my roadblock was that when I began approaching people for the funding needed, I was not very successful, and I was very discouraged.
Until you really get the financial situation set up, you can't do much more than share a vision. So we're just taking it step by step. As the money comes in and the opportunities present themselves, we'll execute them.
You really do have to treat it kind of like a business, that it is. Because you're there to make sure the doors are open, that the services are provided, that there's a qualified staff, and you can't do that without the funds to do it.
I think what surprised me most in the planning is that for me, being in hospice for about 15 years, I think, oh, of course, the whole world's going to understand that there's a need for this community house for the dying. So it's going to happen quickly. And what I've come to find out, it's not so quick, and it's not so easy to raise money for something where people believe there isn't hope. So what we're really trying to do is transform the traditional standard of hope for a cure to hope for quality of life, comfort, and dignity with death.
One of our biggest challenges was really describing to hospice what it is that we were doing. And ultimately, I can remember that they got it, and a light switch went off in their head. If you can do this, that would be amazing.
Talking about hurdles, we started out looking to rent a property to do the work. We found, after not too long searching, that folks who had private homes for rent were really not interested in renting their home to a group where their work was going to involve people dying in the home.
Running a home, you can't even imagine some of your obstacles that you will have. A few months ago, they called me and said that the kitchen floor was floating. Literally, we had a water leak and it was literally floating. We got notice that our rental property that we were in was being foreclosed on. There's always something, and you just never can tell what's gonna come down the pike. It's always a new day at the journey home.
The Omega Home Network originated and grew organically. It started like everything else in this work, starts as conversation between a couple of people. And that conversation grew and built and expanded, and more people were invited into the conversation, and suddenly we were having our first conference.
To know that there were other people that already had homes and that felt that it was part of their responsibility to share their information and to pay it forward and to mentor people like myself and Greg that want to start a home in a state where there are no existing homes.
We were also very excited about meeting people in the roles that we knew would be needed at the Omega conference, and finding a home for colleagues and networking.
Attending the network conference is something that I've come back to my staff after the past 2 years of going, and I'm like, oh, I wish you guys could go. It gives you a new insight on the same exact home, but just recharges your battery and just helps you to say, we are doing the right thing. We are doing the best thing that we can do for our community and for our guests here at the house.
The seminars are wonderful. The relationships are crucial.
We have people join the network at all different stages. Some come when they are just beginning to hold the vision and they've done their internet research and they found us online. And we have people who have been providing services for a decade. So people come into it at different stages, and that's great because we all learn from each other and everyone's got something to offer.
Right when we started our journey, the Omega Home Network was kind of establishing itself and establishing the website and its conferences. And so it really couldn't have come at a better time for us because we are just embarking on our journey, and to have such an amazing resource such as the Omega Network to call upon, to have discussions with, and to learn best practices couldn't be more valuable.
Tricia Shelley, another hospice nurse, introduced us to the Omega Home Network and was the instigator for an RV trip to visit Clare House, the Journey Home, and the Abode Home. We did that last March, and we're very excited and inspired by everything we learned from people who have existing homes, and that challenges are part of the journey.
We discovered the Omega Home Network before it was even called that. We knew early on that we would need help and support in this process. And so as we got to know Clare House, they had contact with many other homes. And so from the very first conference, perhaps, we were there learning and watching.
I was on Facebook about 4 years ago, and I was able to see a post by the Sarah House in Santa Barbara, California, which I've toured, and they posted something and I hit like, and then I could see that there was another home with the same model posting, and I hit like. This happened a few times, and then I got a phone call from Kelly Scott from Clare House and invited me to the 2014 conference, and so that's how I became familiar with it and am just ever so thankful.
Today was a marvelous day because of something we learned at the Omega Home Network conference last year. We learned about the Threshold Choir. And it turns out there's a Threshold Choir not too close to us, but these wonderful people come down from up on the west side, and it's in Southern California. It always takes a while, so maybe they drive for an hour to come see our residents, and they do it, and they came yesterday, and it was marvelous, and it was peaceful, and it was inspiring. So the Omega Home Network brings us things like that.
The Omega Home Network continues to be a tremendous source of support and a resource for me. If it was not for them, I would not have filed for my 501c3. It was with their assistance that I did that, and I recently received notification that we were approved. Yay! And I am moving forward.
When you have to do a 501c3 and you have to fill out all that paperwork with all of the things that have already been done, so that we didn't have to reinvent those wheels, and we could just take the information that they had put together, customize it to our vision, it saved tens of hours.
Yes.
That was huge.
The biggest advantage of being part of this network is the fact that a lot of lessons have been learned by others that have gone down this journey already, And being somebody that I don't need to recreate the wheel, I can reach out to multiple people that can tell me their experiences and advice, and it's a great time saver and a great way to learn the best approach to take on some of these difficult situations that we face.
It's a really daunting task to start a home like this, and when you find out that you've got a tribe out there that from coast to coast, north to south, across this country, there are other people that hold that same mission and vision, and you can pick up the phone and ask a question. Those answers are just out there for people to access. They just have to pick up the phone or send an email, make a visit, and that draws us together so much. We're never more than that phone call away from each other.
What keeps me inspired about the work at Hospice House are the people that are involved, the volunteers that help us, the staff that is wonderful, but mostly the guests that come into the Hospice House and their families. They are all families that are in need because we only die once, and so their loved one is very important, and it behooves all of us to treat each and every person as if it was our loved one dying. So this is what keeps us going, is being able to do for others what we would like done for ourselves.
What keeps me inspired is my beloved homeless community. When I sit with them and I listen to their stories, I am just so touched by their gratitude, their resilience, their sense of hope, and to be able to provide a home for them where they can feel supported and loved, valued, respected. That keeps me going, as well as the Omega Home Network that has been a constant source and resource for mentoring and supporting and answering questions for me.
I work with some amazing people. Coming in to work every day and finding these people here in this building and being on a team with them is inspirational, it's motivating, it's fun. You know, people think it wouldn't necessarily be a fun place to work, but it is a lot of fun, and it's because of the people that are here that bring life and love and laughter into this building.
I think people need to extend mercy to other people. It's really rare these days that you see people saying, you know, I want to do this because I really care and I think it's the right thing and I want to give this. So that's what inspires me.
So much of our culture is surrounded in silence or a shroud of silence when it comes to dying. And by having Porticelli House in our community, people can come and practice that and then take it back out and share that with other people. So we're here to serve the person that is in the bed with us right in front of us, but we also are here to serve the volunteers who come to share that experience. They learn and they take it back out with them. And I think that's probably going to be one of the greatest impacts of this mission.
Having been with hospice since the early 80s and worked all the years and seen so many people through the years, I was in a position to receive the care that we give here in 2014, which was 14 years after we opened the house. My husband had a sudden stroke and we brought him to the house for his last 40 days. And it helped me to realize once again the tremendous need we all have when we're losing that person we love. It allowed my children and my grandchildren to be a part of that in a way that it just cemented what we had been doing all these years. And I was so thankful, and everybody that comes in here, we get that same type of thankfulness that we are here to support people at such an important time in their life.